Happy Hoya-Days! For the month of December, I am going to be showcasing a Hoya-a-day, and we're going to do a countdown from Christmas to New Year of my top favourite plants too. But I thought I would kick off Happy Hoya-Days series by telling you 5 things that I think have really helped me to grow happy, healthy Hoya. These are just general rules of thumb that I keep in mind when I'm growing and caring for my Hoya. If there's something you think I should have included or something you don't agree with, please let me know in the comments below. It's a great way for us all to learn different things. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're not already subscribed, just to support my teeny tiny channel. Okay, let's go. The first thing I have on my list is chop for a fuller pot. And what I mean by that is Hoya are awesome. When you chop them, they tend to activate nodes at different parts of the plant. A great example of this is my Hoya Herscheliana. This came to me as a small, I think she was a 6-leaf cutting. I let her grow 2 new leaves, then I chopped her, put her straight into the pot. Once that established and gave me 2 new leaves on the new vine, 2 new leaves on the next vine, I chopped her again. So she had activated at 3 or 4 nodes all the way down the stem, and now I have a big, full, bushy plant that is growing up and out and in all different directions. I absolutely love her. So give that a try. You can propagate them in your normal way. I just tend to put them straight back in with the mama plant unless I'm looking to sell them. The next thing I have on my list is, this might be a controversial one, drying up vines. If you don't like the look of drying up vines, then for sure chop them. I have no issues with people chopping vines. But if you're just chopping them because you think they're dead, give them a couple more weeks and just see what happens. I found that more often than not, when I leave a dried up vine just below the piece that's dried up, I will either get an activated node or I will get a peduncle in many cases. And I'm going to show you some examples of that. This is my Hoya Skinneriana, and you can see that the vine had dried up. I didn't cut it, I left it, and you can see the new vine came from just below where it had dried. I also have an example on my Hoya latifolia just green form, was formerly macrophylla. I'm just looking at it now and it looks like she's activated a peduncle where the vine had dried. So it's just something to keep in mind if you don't like it. If you don't like the look of it, absolutely chop it, and she'll likely activate a node lower down. So either way, I think you're gonna win. Okay, number 3 on my list is big leaves or blooms. Now, this isn't 100%, and you do need to experiment a little bit here and kind of figure out what your plant needs. But the general rule of thumb I work to is, if I want big leaves, I give the Hoya medium to lower light. If I want blooms, I give the Hoya high light. I want you to remember that when we have our Hoya in a window that's already filtered light, so all of our windows now have some kind of filtration in them. So most of my Hoya that I want to bloom are in my south facing window, which isn't full sun because of that filtering that's coming through. But a really good rule of thumb is, if you want bigger leaves, lower light. If you want blooms, higher light. Sometimes though, you will get a plant that surprises you and gives you both blooms and big leaves in either of those low light or high light conditions. So it's really worth experimenting with them. Number 4, fertilizer. I find that our plants in general need more fertilizer than we're giving them, or certainly than I was giving them. I think that we're led to believe that we should be diluting our fertilizer, or you know, only fertilizing every 3rd or 4th watering. I don't think that that is necessarily what our plants need. I have considered doing a video on fertilizer, and maybe I will in the future, but fertilizer was the hardest thing for me to get a grasp on with any of my plants. And I feel like doing a video on it would be a little bit prescriptive, when really it is about trial and error. And with fertilizer, for me, I had to be okay with potentially burning some of my plants because I was over fertilizing them. I haven't had that fertilizer burn on any of my plants, including my Hoya. And I have been fertilizing now probably for the last year, so since January time. All of my Hoya get a slow release balls. Depending on the size of the pot, depends on how many balls I give them. And then I water every second watering with a 15-30-15, and I do not dilute. I just give whatever it says on the directions. I don't dilute it down. I don't give them any less, and I do that year round. And prior to that, I was like barely giving my plants any fertilizer because I was using, such a small amount of fertilizer compared to what was recommended. And I was only giving them fertilizer every fourth watering, so they were barely getting anything. I use a 15-30-15 for two reasons. It tends to be a blooming fertilizer, so for plants that bloom, but also many of my non-Hoya plants are variegated, and having that lower nitrogen is actually good for promoting or maintaining variegation. So I just use it in every second watering for everything, and it's made a big difference. And then last on my list is watering. I think when I first started collecting Hoya, the very general advice that would come with a new Hoya would be let it dry out before watering. And now I just completely ignore that advice. When I sell a Hoya, I tell my customers that for my Hoya that are in a soil substrate, I water them when they're 75% dry. I just use a chopstick, I push it into the pot 3/4 of the way. If it comes out dry, I water. If in doubt, wait a few days. I tend to say that Hoya do better underwatered as opposed to overwatered, and I do still stick by that. I think it's easier for a plant to recover from dry rot as opposed to wet rot or overwatering. But ultimately, we don't want to get our plants to the point of either dry rot or wet rot. And I just find with Hoya that 75% is perfect. With my plants that are in semi-hydro or a soilless mix, I never let it dry out, guys. I always keep a reservoir in the bottom of the pot. If you've been with me for a while, you'll know that I'm slowly moving or transitioning a lot of my Hoya from soil into semi-hydro, and actually a lot of my plants generally from soil into semi-hydro. And this is because I just cannot keep on top of watering, and it's got everything to do with my humidity. So again, watering is one of the care pieces that is really specific to your growing environments. So for me, where in the summer I'm lucky if I get 35 to 40% humidity, and right now in my study it was 17% humidity yesterday. So I'm having to top up my reservoirs for my plants that are in pond in my study. I'm topping it up every second day. I just cannot keep on top of watering. With soil, it would be, even worse. And especially with a chunky mix, it just couldn't hold enough moisture for my plants to thrive. And the thing is, my Hoyas were doing okay when I was letting them dry out, but they were not thriving, and I was getting more dry rot than I would like. So I have found that watering my plants that are in soil more frequently and giving access to moisture to my plants that are in semi-hydro, the speed of growth has been phenomenal for me. I've really seen all of my Hoyas just take off since I've started upping their water and not letting them dry out completely. I think if you live in a humid environment, letting them dry out between waterings and using a chunky soil mix is absolutely good advice for you. But for me, it's just never gonna work. So don't be afraid to play around with that, and don't be afraid to break the rules or the guidance that you read online to kind of tweak your care of your plants to your own growing environment. I want to add a bit of a disclaimer here. All of these things that I've mentioned, chopping for a fuller pot, big leaves or blooms, fertilizer, water, all of these things together could be why my Hoya have done really well this year. Or it could just be one or two of them together. Or it could just be because I've become more experienced in growing Hoya and their care needs. But I really think upping their water and their access to water has been the key thing for me in getting that quick, big, beautiful growth from my Hoya, and blooms too. There's a lot that comes with that, right? I'm watering more frequently, so I'm checking my plants more frequently, so I'm noticing, any issues more quickly. So, it is all tied in, but I really do think that getting on top and understanding my watering needs of my plants has what's really helped. I really hope that this was helpful. I'm really looking forward to sharing a Hoya-a-day with you going forward. Thanks for watching. Oh, little extra, you see that little post-it on the floor there? I came into my study, yesterday, I think, and Quinn had stuck post-its on everything that just said, I love you, you are beautiful, you're the best mama ever. She's just the best kid. She actually was diagnosed with pneumonia yesterday, and we started her on steroids, and she's just starting to pick up a little bit. She's been very sick, guys, for the last few days, and with Ian being away, it's been a little bit scary, let me tell you. But yeah, today she woke up and she was more like herself, which just made me feel a million times better. Okay, leave me a comment, let me know what you thought about this, anything you should add. Maybe this is something I'll update periodically throughout the year. Try some of these, experiment, don't be afraid. Even if it's like chop your plant and experiment, you know, put one in highlight, one in low light and see what happens. That's what I do. I play around with different ways of growing my plants, and it's really fun. Like, that's what makes it fun for me. Just to experiment and to kind of see what happens. What happens when I put them on a trellis? What happens when I let them trail? What happens if I grow them in leca as opposed to pon? Like, I love all that stuff. Like a kid experimenting, right? Okay, hope you're getting ready for the holidays, and we will talk next time. Bye.